So up here on the screen you see the Canvas homepage. For those who are enrolled for 2 credits who are uncertain on how to complete the Entrepreneurship Media Review Assessments, I'm just going to show you that you need to scroll down to the bottom of the page, just click on this. Some of you are saying to yourselves, I thought those were already due. They were. You got extra points if you got them done on time, but there were enough of you that said, I didn't fully understand how to do this, that I took credit for that and extended the deadline. There's a high enough number of you. So you click on this, for example, on this particular one, you're going to click there, watch the video. In some of your browsers, the video will appear right here. You click the next button, and on the next screen, you click Take the Quiz. After the quiz, you'll complete that module, and then you can click on to the next module. So you can click on modules to get to those. There are 12 of them, and it's just a previous and next control button at the bottom. You click through, you take 1 quiz on each module. Other announcements. The calculation of your grade in Canvas is only accurate if the percentage that it's showing is only accurate, and this is something you've heard before at the first of the semester when I talked to you about this. If you have calculate based only on graded assignments clicked, and you have not clicked send in an assignment, it doesn't give you 0 points. So you need to be aware of that. The common sense, the simple way to calculate your grade is add up all the points you've earned. That would be this column. In this case, it's a test student and no points have been awarded, but it would be this column. You'd add those up and divide it by 1,000 points if you're in for 1 credit. Divide it by 2,000 if you're in for 2 credits. That'll give you your percent, and refer to the class outline. You'll see where your standing is. Had enough questions about that I figured I better mention that. Opportunity Quest extra credit has now been graded. The Launch Meetup extra credit from this week has been graded and placed in there. Today is our final guest presenter, who it'll be my privilege to introduce in just a moment. However, there are a couple of things you need to understand. We do meet next week, same time, same place, and there is that'll be kind of a fun meeting. We'll be doing a review and also showcasing some of your finest and most creative business ideas that you've submitted this semester. There will be some prizes awarded and extra credit opportunities for everyone who is in attendance next week toward the end of the semester. Not that you need it. Many of you have done awesome in this class, but I think the experience will be worth your time to be here for that next week. Launch Meetup again next Tuesday at 3:30 in the library. It's room 102. It's kind of to the back and to your left as you walk in past the circulation desk. There's a room there. You're invited to that again next Tuesday. Come with your innovative ideas. We'll discuss them. Now it is my privilege to go ahead and introduce Mr. Mel Torrie. Mr. Mel Torrie has a degree in electrical engineering from Utah State University and is the founder and CEO of Autonomous Solutions Incorporated, or ASI, in Logan, Utah. Is it ASI Robotics? Both, either? They develop and sell systems for driverless ground vehicles in various applications like military, mining, agriculture, materials handling, automotive proving grounds, industrial cleaning, security, and others. Prior to founding ASI 16 years ago, Mr. Torrie worked at Utah State University, where he managed the NASA Space Shuttle payload. Mel is a thought leader in the robotics community and has delivered addresses at major conferences and events such as Precision Farming Expo, RoboBusiness, the Canadian Institute of Mining, Optimizing Mining Operations, and Rise Hong Kong, as well as others. In fact, one of his addresses or products was featured at a large national or international agriculture event, and I heard the news piece about that on my way to work one day. And that is when I came in and asked a few people that might know who this company was. And they said, oh yes, that's a Utah company, and I know who that is. And that is how he got on our list of presenters. And so we're glad that we were able to catch that news piece about your company. And without any further ado, I'd like to go ahead and turn this over to Mr. Mel Torrie.
Thank you. I have never been down here, but at Utah State University in our engineering classes, always the smartest kids were always the ones from snow. They seem to get, woo! And I'm not kidding. They are the ones who had the basics down. Seemed like they had the small enough classes where they figured out the calculus and those things that went over my head and brought those basics to the table before the rest of us had them figured out. And I definitely could see the difference. I'm a little nervous. I'm used to small towns. Ephraim's kind of big for me. I was raised in a town of 120 people on a farm in the middle of nowhere in Alberta, Canada. So forgive me if I'm a little nervous and talk fast. I really want to cover a lot of stuff, so we're going to move quickly. So how do you bootstrap a company and make it a place you still want to work is kind of the idea of what I want to cover. A little bit about the company and a movie just to show some of the basics of what we do. We are, like I said, about 16 years in business. We have 110 employees, and we're located up by Logan, Utah, and have employees from around the world. We automate vehicles is really the bottom line. Some funky ones, I don't know if everyone can see, but the LAPD SWAT team uses this for parking violations. Actually, they use it for SWAT situations where they need to get a Suburban out of a fourth floor parking lot at the airport, or someone shot a policeman. They brought that in and ripped his house apart wall by wall until they got to him at the back of his house. And he shot it 100 times until he gave up. These are at all the major border crossings in Israel for bomb disposal, farming. We'll show some videos of some of this. This is interesting. This is a parking robot. So you drive into a garage, scan your credit card, and then the robot picks up your car and goes and parks it, and you get about double the parking that you could in a normal parking garage. So our mission is to help you reach your potential, and that's what drives everything we do. We get a bad rap once in a while that robotics are taking jobs. We're trying to get people out of lame jobs. So mind-numbing, dangerous, those kinds of things. So I was born again on a farm in the middle of nowhere, and that's what it looks like. And so you drive 18 hours a day in a circle. And so after enough of that, you get a feeling for, this is not what I was created for. I have a brain. The girlfriend picture on the dash just didn't keep you going very long. And so we try to help people reach their potential, get that farmer out of that cab where he's not using his brain, help the partners, help the employees work on tough problems, and then give back. And so we actually sponsor a orphanage with robotics kits in South Africa to help them rejuvenate their staffing for the robotic mining that we do over there. So that's kind of what drives us. Show a video here of some of the robots. So the first one is mining. A lot of danger here. This is a 100-ton truck driving robotically in Arizona. It's got stereo cameras, lasers, and radars that help it see in front of it so that it doesn't run into things. We actually have these running down in South Africa, and the truck drivers who were in these rough riding vehicles are now in the air-conditioned offices running the autonomous equipment through an interface like a video game. This is an autonomous truck that will carry explosives into a mine. Down in South America, they want to dig the mine steep enough so that they can get deeper, but the challenge is that there's more worry about cave-ins, and so they don't want anyone in the mine at all because of danger, and so this will actually carry all of the explosives that are used to load the holes that are drilled so that they can blast. These excavators were done for the big Kennecott collapse in Salt Lake area, and so we did all remote control excavators so that they could, from a safe distance, command the shovels and dig their way out of that collapse. This is at Detroit. We automate the proving grounds for 3 out of the 5 big automakers. You can see kind of a rough ride here for that reporter. We have injuries every week in proving grounds, and so it's an ideal application to automate. This is the proving grounds at Ford, and there's a kit that we strap into a vehicle, and so within an hour or two it can be autonomous and get someone out of that mind-numbing job of driving in a circle. For another automobile manufacturer, they have to test the airbags and make sure they only go off at certain G forces. And so this is us on a Friday, jumping a vehicle and then trying to roll it over. So they do rollover tests as well. And so they've got to prove that it's safe, and they have to do it without training wheels now. And so they have a J-hook test that they do. So we do jumps over certain heights, and then we do this J-hook test and actually roll over the vehicles to test their safety limits for both the rollover and the airbags, that kind of thing. With USU, for their electrification of their buses, we automate their proving grounds for testing this electric bus setup that they have, and it pulls over some charging ports, and so it charges while it drives, and accuracy is important because you get a better power transfer. This is at our proving grounds in Petersboro, Utah. About 10 people live there. Again, I like the small towns. This is the vehicle that was probably in the news that was mentioned by Alan. This is the future of autonomy in agriculture. We're partnering with Case New Holland, and this is the concept tractor that we did with them. We've been working with them for about 5 years on autonomy. They wanted to show what the future is and give their customers some of that taste and get feedback and drive our innovation from there. And so we did both vehicles without cabs, vehicles with cabs, and the initial release will definitely have a cab so you can do those tricky things, then get out, flip a switch, and then go to full autonomy. This one has intelligence. Using a laser, it can see where the obstacles are, and then it'll intelligently plan around it. The farmer would have a tablet in his pickup truck, and he could run his whole farm that way. Some different tillage, multiple vehicles working together, and so we have the analysis so you can determine what's the right number of vehicles, what's the right size of vehicles, what are the cost trade-offs, with compaction and labor and time and fuel. This is in a pilot farm down in Texas doing chemical spraying, get people out of that dangerous exposure, keep them from having two-headed children. This is mowing in a vineyard down in California. Have to be very precise in the driving. And this is using a skid steer, which some orchards and vineyards use because of the flotation. Some electrostatic spraying. There's huge issues with labor right now, both with the minimum wage hikes that have just been voted in and with Trump shutting down the border. And so there's a huge demand with orchard and vineyard right now, and we're getting a lot of demand for that. With Sharp out of Japan, we've done a security surveillance vehicle, so this will be starting sales in January. The factory does the manufacturing over in Japan, and we do the software and electronics and the command center. And so this is just showing some scenarios, but the idea being a security guard would sit in a command center and then have multiple vehicles out doing the surveillance in those dangerous environments. Factory warehouse automation, we're doing cleaning, some security robots in Singapore, LAPD. This is Convoy for Iraq, Afghanistan. That actually has a string between the two vehicles, a Kevlar string. And we've had up to 10 vehicles running in Afghanistan with a human driving the front vehicle and all the rest of them following in a train. So you minimize the exposure to the IEDs. And this is a PackBot military robot running with a $100 Connect video game sensor. This is my baby. This is Chaos. Built it with Legos about 16, 17 years ago and still hasn't sold many. But it was brilliant, honest. No, it is our most requested robot, but because it's too expensive and we haven't found a market that truly has enough units in it, we get sporadic requests, one for nuclear inspection, one for bomb disposal, one for SWAT teams, and there's 100 here, so let's invest money and get molds made and get the price down. So it's definitely it will be one of those deathbed remorses of mine that we never spent the money to get the cost down and actually sell thousands. So, what should you do? What career should you follow? I love this advice from Steve Jobs. It's gotten me in trouble with some others of my scout troops, but I really think you should do what you love. Steve Jobs said, the only way to do great work is to love what you do. If you haven't found it yet, keep looking. Don't settle. As with all matters of the heart, you'll know when you find it. Don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your inner voice. And most important, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. They somehow already know what you truly want to become. Everything else is secondary. So I've tried to talk a lot of scouts out of becoming a dentist for the money. And I just found out yesterday that the #1 suicide rate is dentists. And that's what most of my scouts in my scout troop wanted to become, because 4-day work week and lots of money. And anyway, do what you love. So how? I saw this once and thought it was kind of funny until I started to recognize some of those curves. And really found that the recipe books that you read about business, here are the 5 things you need to do, 5 chapters. And I was doing all those things and things were falling apart and not going the way we had planned. One example, we were working with an ag manufacturer and the customers were demanding the product. We had the product ready, but then because of liability concerns of, well, if it runs into someone, we're going to get sued, they shut the whole program down. And so that was our first near-death experience. I figured everyone was going to end up in their mother-in-law's basements. We're going to shut down the company. Just bad things happen. I have found that biographies really bring out what it's really like. And so if you really want to jump in with both feet in the entrepreneurial space, I have found biographies truly give you that feel for what's the journey going to be like. Richard Branson wrote a couple of books on his journey, and the example that I liked is when he started the airplane part of his business. And he was just looking for needs out there, and he was at an airport, an airplane flight got canceled, and so there were 50 people there with no options to get where they wanted to go. He saw a charter desk. He went over and chartered a plane and went and sold tickets to everyone that was delayed, and got home after that and said, hey, there's really a need here. He called up Boeing, asked if they had any old leasable planes, got a 727 and started his business. And again, he was following the recipes. He was following all the steps you should do for being successful in a business. And things were going great, and all of a sudden it tapered off and then started to drop. Couldn't figure out what was going on. And so they did a bunch of investigation, and they found out that British Airways was actually using their access to their records in the computer so that they could link flights together. They were actually calling up people and telling them their flights were canceled off of Virgin Atlantic, but we have a British Airways flight you can get on. Here's your tickets. And so they were calling people, they were meeting them at the curb and telling them, hey, your flights are canceled, quick, we've got a great flight for you, we can even get you into first class. And they were taking all of their best customers, lying about flights being canceled, and his business was tanking. And so almost went out of business, big lawsuit, finally won after multiple years. But again, following the recipe book, but crap happens. Am I allowed to say that? I'm not at BYU. Let's see. Obstacles are the way. So bad things do happen. I have found that those are critical. That journey has helped me find the kind of strengths, intelligence, approach that has been critical for my success going forward. So just like the little bird analogy that if you help them out of their shell, they die, they need that strength of that adversity to get through the rest of their life. I have found that those surprises, those problems that I've had have been critical in later steps in being successful. And so as you hit those roller coasters, those emotional, gut-wrenching kinds of experience, understanding that those things are building the strength, the key advantages, the intelligence that you need to take things to another level can really make the journey more tolerable. I've seen people experience the identical things in life, and some are in misery and some are excited and engaged by it. And I've seen some of my cousins come home from football camp and wrestling, and they look exactly like they'd been in a North Korean prison camp. They have purple bruises through their whole body. Wrestling guys running every day till they throw up, starving themselves to get to certain weight limits, things like that. A coach that's yelling and constantly screaming at them. The identical things that you hear about at a prison camp. One is excited about reaching their goals, the other one is in misery. And so your perspective is huge as you try to navigate these roller coasters that are inevitable in the journey. So why bootstrap? I like what Mark Cuban said, that if you have an exit strategy, you're not passionate enough about your business. You've got to love what you're doing, and to truly enjoy that journey, I have found that bootstrapping is a way to really keep control of the things that make that journey enjoyable. Had some friends in the robotics industry that went a different path, and they did the venture capital, and then they went public, the guys from iRobot. And they asked me to come out and speak, and I was talking to their CFO and CTO, and he told me, yeah, we're having a layoff this week of 50 good engineers. It's really a bummer. And I said, I know you have $100 million in the bank because you're a public company. What are you doing? He goes, well, that would cause an inversion on a certain ratio on our P&L, and our stock would drop, Boeing would buy us and move us to Georgia. So that was their whole rationale for this decision to let go some incredible people. And how frustrating that would be for me to let go of brilliant people that we brought in, trained, grew in the company, and then let them go because of some external force that has nothing to do with us that is driving the decisions and the motivation. So I have found with bootstrapping, you really can control some key things that are critical to success. Culture, innovation, keeping your employees thrilled and your customers thrilled. And I've seen scenarios with friends' companies where they haven't been able to do that. Some of the key principles that I've found that have made it possible for us to bootstrap are embracing constraints, diversified focus, and partnering. I like this quote from 37 Signals that says, there's never enough to go around, not enough time, not enough money, not enough people. That's a good thing. Instead of freaking out about these constraints, embrace them. Let them guide you. Constraints drive innovation and force focus. Instead of trying to remove them, use them to your advantage. Constraints are often advantages in disguise. Forget about venture capital, long release cycles, and quick hires. Instead, work with what you have. I have seen many companies get unlimited amount of cash and have failed miserably. And you see a lot of those stories in Silicon Valley where they've been able to raise a ton of money with the brilliant idea. They go into their back room, they create a product. They're not listening to customers because they don't have to. They don't have to go out and make money after the first month. They've got this unlimited amount of cash, so they build their dream product. They haven't gotten the right amount of feedback, and they bomb. Diversified focus. Are you smarter than a VC? Venture capitalists, they typically are those who have succeeded in business. They have exited somehow. They've made millions of dollars. So they're like the smartest business people in the country, supposedly. And they're hitting about 30% success rate in the companies that they invest in. And really 1 out of 10 for companies that are truly successful. So they have found the value in diversity. How can you diversify to make sure that, depending on what is the market doing, the economic cycles, the political arena, how can you diversify in your business is a critical question. I've seen companies, for example, on the political one, where if a Republican is in business, they do data loggers. Republicans in business, they sell a ton in the automotive industry. And when the Democrats come in, that tanks, and typically environmental sensing goes up. And so they found a way to diversify their product offering across both arenas. It might be geographic, across multiple countries. So when the European economy goes down, maybe the US is strong. I found, for me, it's markets. So when mining is down, maybe the automotive is up, and I've found enough balance there through this model where I've got vertical companies under automotive and ag and mining, and that's the diversity that I've chosen. But I found it's a critical survival need that you figure out how you're going to diversify. We have a recession about every 8 years. That's going to tank certain industries. It might be sales that tank. Well, do you have an ongoing revenue stream from consumables? Do you have a leasing model where people don't have to buy a lot of things to keep their usage of your product going? So how have we raised money? There are lots of approaches. Our approach has been partnering, and we've raised about $100 million in doing this, where we're leveraging large companies or large end users. So Monster Farm, Monster Mining Company, or a company that makes automobiles, that kind of thing. So that's where we found the money. That's the kind of money I like, because venture capital, they're all about getting a quick exit. 3 to 7 years, they need to exit to give back the money that they've raised from these institutions like retirement funds. And so their alignment is always towards, we need to make this look as big as possible, as fast as possible, dump it and make our money. I like this kind of money because it's more aligned. That farmer, he wants that product. He wants me to be successful in fielding that product. And so it's all about pushing in the same direction. For getting that 100 million, the Clayton Christensen model has been the sales pitch that I've used. Literally quotes out of his book as I've gone to these billion-dollar companies and asked for money. And he has laid out exactly why big companies struggle in innovating and staying relevant in their industries. And so he provides basically a guideline for why they are failing, and they all have it on their shelves. I guarantee you every lead of innovation at every major company has this book, or one of his books on this innovation, and it provides a guideline of here's where they're struggling and where you as a small business can come in and provide value. It is a challenge when you come into these multi-billion-dollar companies and try to negotiate and set up a partnership, whether it's a sales deal, a development agreement. I have found that it's very hard to have the leverage to strong-arm anything with them. You need their money. And so you've got to be creative. I have found that of any negotiation principle, creativity trumps them all. You've got to find ways to show them that what you want will help them get what they want, and what they are demanding that will hurt you will ultimately hurt them. So one example, I had a big company, $50 billion company from Europe saying, after 5 years of helping you develop a product, then we're going to own your employees. Dang, that's not going to work. He's used to European engineering contracts where people are traded like, their contracts can be traded like contracts. And so he was saying, I get your employees after 5 years, they become my employees. And so I had to, there was no chance for me to leverage him, well, I'll just go somewhere else then, or by darn, I'm going to use this leverage and I'm not going to give you this or not going to give you that. We had to find a creative way to show him that that is going to be bad for him. So guess what? You're going to get my worst employees because I don't want to lose them, and came up with ways to convince them to back down from that demand that they had and show that it was in their best interest to do what I wanted, which is let me keep the employees, pay me a lot of money, happily ever after. Also, this last caveat, there's certain places to embrace your constraints. Attorneys is not that place. Get a good one, spend the money to find the best you can afford to make sure that you get good development contracts. It's kind of interesting for one company we were doing development for. We had put our stickers on the robot. We all had our t-shirts and our hats on, and for the demonstration for their board of directors and their customers, they ripped all of our stickers off. They changed our hats to a different color, our shirts to a different color, because they wanted to look innovative. And so we found that as long as we didn't care who got the credit, we were able to generate a lot of revenue fundraising. Partnering. Some of the key principles I found there, over-communicate. One of the examples from our valley is S&S Sports. They develop roller coasters, and they were doing work for a major Japanese thrill ride company. And they went and showed me after I toured their facility this award for outstanding performance. And they said, it's kind of funny because it was our worst program ever. We were behind on everything and we went over budget by hundreds of thousands of dollars. But because we communicated constantly, they were very kind in understanding what our challenges were and being very, I guess, forgiving in those challenges. I don't think this works for a professor, but for major companies, communicating as you go, they understand that there are challenges. 30% of projects typically, at a minimum, go over budget and over schedule. So communicating is critical in partnering, finding ways to influence them to help align where you want to go as a company and where they want to go. So one of our IP arrangements with all of our companies is we jointly own the intellectual property, and so I get to use that intellectual property for all the other industries that I want to play in. So if it's a tractor company, they get the rights for tractors, I get to use it for trucks and mining trucks and other equipment. Agile is an engineering approach. There's agile development processes that we recommend and live at our company to assure that we can navigate quickly and help them with some of their challenges as a large, slow-moving company. And then minimum viable product, and that's the understanding that you never get it right. You never understand what the customers truly want, and so you make a guess and then you get out there as fast as possible and iterate with them. That's very hard for a big company to swallow. They want to go away for 3 years, develop the next tractor, and then throw it over the fence, and they will like it, and we will train them and convince them of that with the right sales pitch and the right user's manuals and such. So finding ways to experiment early is a critical principle we found. So how do you enjoy the journey? I found there are 3 critical elements to that. Your leadership style, how you execute, get things done, and then general culture. I've really struggled as I've studied great companies, especially the ones that get a lot of press. Apple, Oracle, Amazon are 3 great examples, and I struggled because my utopian view of leadership style was being violated at every turn by these companies. If you read Bezos' biography, you hear some of the things that he said to his employees, did to employees. The same with Apple. I'll talk a little more about Steve Jobs in a minute, but I found that ultimately alignment trumps everything else. If you've got a company all moving in the same direction as fast as possible, then you're going to learn from your mistakes, you're going to quickly navigate and be successful in the marketplace. You may not enjoy the journey, but you will be successful as a company. So can you have both? Can you get world domination, which is my subtle goal, and enjoy the journey? How do you win people's hearts and hands and heads? And the first thing I tried was consensus. I thought we're going to have this family-like business where we all agree, and that was a really bad idea. It's the slowest way to innovate. If you want everyone on the same page, that takes a long time. You walk past a lot of opportunities because it took you too long to get everyone on the same page. It discourages disparate voices. So if you always have an idiot who is concerned about running people over, then you're never going to get anything done because he's always going to stop you from developing that thing that could run someone over. And so if you have the right voices in the room, you will never get anything done. And so you've got to have the guy who's low risk tolerance. He cares about safety. You've got to have him in the room. You've got to have that dreamer who's got the vision of the farm of the future. You've got to have the financial person. You've got to have all those people. And if you're always pushing for consensus, you will start to weed out those people who say no. They will bring voices to the table that you don't want to hear because it will slow you down. And that is bad. You've got to have all of those voices coming in. If you have to get agreement, then you're just going to struggle to get anything done. So I've found that the ideal culture for me, for my personality type, is really built around humble. And so whether that's the leadership, whether that's the employees, the ability to influence people, more like a sincere friend versus yelling and screaming, developing people, finding out where their sweet spot is and helping them around that. Over-communicating, this is an example of our staff meetings where we show the P&L the profit and loss statements, all of the financials are shown every month to the staff. We meet, we feed them lunch every week, and then we have different groups present. And so very transparent. They all know where we're coming from, what our plans are, and how their behavior is influencing the end result and the financials. And then obviously hiring. So alignment of motives. This is tough because people don't even know what motivates them. There have been numerous studies trying to figure out what motivates people to do things, and they will say one thing, and then when you look at their buying behavior, it was something completely different. And there's some fun studies if you want to dig into that. But it is critical to get alignment. How do you do that and still enjoy the journey? That means you've got to find what lights their fire. And it is crazy, the variability in that. So I've had engineers who it's all about the money. I want to retire at 45. All I care about is money. I don't care about weekends. I don't care about family. I don't care about mastery, purpose, food, autonomy. I want to make money. Then I have other engineers across the desk from them that if you talk about money, you motivate me with money, that's like prostitution, and I want nothing to do with it, and I want to leave the company. And I've literally had that kind of thing. Two guys, 6 feet apart, completely different motives. And so it takes creativity to align, to figure out how to give people what lights their fire. For some, it is food, and I give away a lot of free food. Financial independence, some people it is about the money. I want to retire. I want to go do other things. I want to go to Africa and build houses. Some people want the autonomy. I want to have the freedom to do what I want on a daily basis and not be told what to do. And so finding ways to align everyone in the same direction and give them what they need takes a lot of creativity, but it is worth the effort. Hiring. If I look at the ideal executive to put around me, it's someone who is willing to say, this is what I think, but I'll support whatever direction you choose. So it's a yes person after the decision is made, not before. You've got to have those people who are willing to speak up, say where they don't agree, willing to always voice their opinion, but when a decision is made that they are completely on board. You don't want whiners who, you didn't choose my way, so I'm not going to give you my opinion next. That, from personal experience, is very painful and it causes a lot of problems. So, beyond choosing and working on helping people develop those kind of key traits, you've also got to work on yourself. One of the most interesting things I have learned in my entrepreneurial adventure has been, one, the value of personality styles. I rejected these outright. I thought they were stupid in college. I didn't want to take them. I didn't want anyone to tell me I couldn't be a CEO of a company and some analysis of my character traits giving me that feedback. I have enough going against me to have some science telling me I'm not a CEO and I can't follow the dreams that I have. And so I rejected them outright. But I took a class from Zions Bank they had for entrepreneurs, and it was a huge eureka moment because they talked about these different personality styles and how some people are very good at vision. They do vision. They're creative, long-term thinkers. And there are other people who don't do vision. Electrical engineers are some who don't do vision. Some very detail-oriented people who can do circuit boards, who are fine sitting at a desk, working on a board design, soldering on something for hours. They don't think past next week. And so when I was all excited about my vision and how critical it is, according to the recipe books, that I get everyone excited about this brilliant, here's where we're going to be in 5, 10 years, they could give a rip. Yeah, I'll believe it when I see it. This is what matters to me, is my independence to be able to solve this really tough problem. Understanding that was a huge eureka for me, that one, just self-esteem. As a CEO, I am trying to get all of these nerds aligned and they don't get vision. And it was just huge for me. And there are many things around that that's important. But understanding who you are, understanding what your unique ability is, that's so critical. And so, as I read Steve Jobs' biography, I was put into a pretty deep funk. I went into a mini depression because he has done everything I want to do. World domination, as I mentioned. Make something very complex simple. which robotic systems with GPS and communications and electronics and multiple computers, and making that simple is something I've got to do. I've got to get people to do things they don't think they can do. And so he did that. He said, hey, you're going to make this phone that's aluminum case still radiate enough signal strength to get your cell phone to work. You need to make this mouse move like this dial pad to move like that. And literally, he fired people who said they couldn't do it. And he hired people who said they could. He yelled and screamed. He publicly embarrassed. He fired at random. If you read his biography, you get a pretty good idea of the kind of guy he was. And I was not that guy, and I got very depressed. I can't tell a guy his offering, whatever that circuit board design, that robot solution, is not good enough. And how in the world am I going to get this done? World domination without that personality seemed like this gap that was impossible to cross, because most of the celebrated CEOs at the time, the Bezos and Steve Jobs, I just couldn't be it. And so I was trying to figure that out. I was literally praying for being a jerk. I wanted to not care what people thought. I wanted to be able to tell them that that is not good enough. You have got to go back, and until you get this working, you can't sleep or eat. And I literally prayed to be a jerk. And ultimately, I learned that David and Goliath's story of trying to put on the armor of Steve Jobs when I'm a slingshot guy is never going to work. And so as you figure out what your unique abilities are, what your slingshot is, do not try to be anybody else. Do not try to be any profile of some other person that you've studied that is successful. You've got to find a way to be successful with who you are and what your strengths are. And the more you can spend time on that, the happier you're going to be, the more successful you're going to be spending time on what you're good at in the approach that is more native to your personality. And so one of my coaches said, it takes 3 types of people to do a company. You need people who are the creatives. He called it make it up, make it real, and make it repeatable. And so the make it real, they're the ones who are really good at execution. The make it repeatable, those are the ones who are the QA guys who can find what's wrong with anything. They're not dreamers. They don't think out very far other than we need to make 1 million of these and this is going to fail. And you need all 3 of those. And so I was getting insecure that I wasn't a brilliant execution guy. And you know what? I'm the creative vision guy. That's okay. I need to surround myself with people who are good at execution and stop being insecure about I'm not the detail-oriented guy who gets everything done every day and it's planned out just like this. That would squelch what my slingshot was. And so understanding that, being okay with that was just critical. And so now I delegate that. I bring people around me that are good at those other things. One critical caveat there is you don't bring in someone who brings in the jerk side. So a lot of people were telling me, I was literally told every time I met with this executive, the CEO from a multi-billion-dollar company, that I needed to fire myself and hire a real CEO. And that started to wear on me a little. And he was saying, bring people around you that are the Steve Jobs jerks. And what I learned was it is critical that I'm true to the kind of company that I want to work at, the kind of personality that I have, and the executives around me that I'll be comfortable working in. If I'm sitting next to this guy who's yelling at my people for being stupid and firing them at will, I am not going to be happy. I'm not going to enjoy the journey, and the company won't be as successful. So you bring people around you that help supplement your skills, but not what people would foresee as a weakness around the culture side of things. Build the culture that makes sense for your personality. I have heard that you shouldn't set unrealistic dreams, but world domination and the people that I look up to have all accomplished those unrealistic things. So what is the answer there? I think these talk to it. Michelangelo, if people knew how hard I had to work to gain my mastery, it would not seem wonderful at all. If everyone worked as hard as I do, I'd be out of a job. The best performers set goals that are not about the outcome, but about the process of reaching the outcome. And so you set realistic habits, whether that's 2 hours of this a day, 1 hour of this a day. Those are the kinds of things that will lead to accomplishing those unrealistic dreams. And if you can figure out what those are, you will get to that success. And so one of the terms that people have used for those kinds of habits is called deliberate practice. And this is a study of exceptional people and what were the key things that they did that was different. You will find, like this says, it definitely isn't what most of us do on the job every day, which begins to explain the great mystery of the workplace. Why we're surrounded by so many people who have worked hard for decades but have never approached greatness. So there are plenty of people who played more basketball than Michael Jordan and had more athletic skills than Kobe. It wasn't those things that made the difference, it was how they practiced. And so there is a study around this, and finding those things in your area, whatever you choose to pursue, whether it's electrical engineering, what do those people who became truly great do? They studied these kinds of things. Finding a coach, finding ways to put in the time and the discipline to figure out what those are and to do them on a regular basis is what makes the difference. And so if you read a book that I'll mention here later, that Talent is Overrated, it talks through different scenarios, whether it was football, violin, whatever, the difference between the great and the mediocre or the okay. So as part of that culture, how do you influence in a positive way? It has become clear to me over and over and over again what Dale Carnegie said about people. He said that the place where you'll find the most people who are certain that they did the right thing was in the jails of the U.S. That everyone does what they think is the right thing at the time. They find the rationale to rationalize their behavior and their choices. And so if you're trying to get alignment, whatever they're doing they think is the right thing based on their background and their experience. And so if you understand that, you've got to find ways to motivate and educate and help them understand a better way, a different approach. And that is a critical personality trait that has come up over and over and over again as I've tried to find alignment and get people where we all need to get world domination. And so one of the ways for my personality is that I brought in metrics and scorekeeping. And so instead of yelling and telling them this is what you need to do and here's why, we just set up the goal, we put measures around their role, and so it's very clear to them. I don't have to yell at them, I don't have to confront them. That cell phone needs to work with an aluminum case and you're only getting 5 dB, whatever. You put measures in place, you don't have to be the yeller and the screamer. Those kinds of measures do the work for you. So to summarize, it's hard, extremely hard. I have found that the ups are huge and the downs are huge as well. It's an amazing journey. I have found that the positives outweigh the negatives, and so I continue to go. I am not good at firing people. And one of the things that it's the hardest thing for me. And we sponsored, as I said, this orphanage in South Africa, and I had an employee who was stealing from the company. He was writing video games for his Android app store, and he was fighting with every one of our customers. And I saw the positive in him. I engaged with his family. We did charity projects with his family. I could not get rid of him. And people said I was an idiot. People said I was. And it wasn't until I went into South Africa and we went to this orphanage, and this little boy was weeping in the corner. All the rest of the kids had our cell phones and they were dancing around, taking videos of themselves and playing. And he kind of got pushed aside and he was laying, weeping in the corner, and I went and picked him up, and the thought hit me that I am not going to be able to help many of these kids unless I get rid of that guy. And so for 15 hours on the flight back, I pined and I struggled and I couldn't sleep, and I ultimately knew that to do what was really important to me, which was to help kids like this, I needed to get rid of the guy. So I called him in, and if there's a YouTube video on how not to fire a guy, I'm the one with the most hits. It was terrible. There was hemming and hawing and staring at the roof, and it was pathetic. It cost me $16,000 to let him go because I said whatever I can do to help, and said you can fly my dogs first class to Australia. It was extremely painful, but I found the why. And if you find the why for you, you can do whatever the how is that you need to be successful. So that's all I have to say. That's some of the lessons that I've learned. I've got some references here for some of the principle-based books that I have found to really resonate with me. And I'll take a couple questions. Yes? Pardon me? Why? Like, what is our why? Some of that comes to that reaching your potential. Oh, so the question. So restating the question, why autonomous solutions? Why did I do that? Why was that the idea I pursued, and what was the motivation? Part of it was that helping people reach their potential. This was a career where you got people out of those lame jobs that I had done a lot of. And so whether it's, I clean toilets to get through Rick's College. There's a lame one. And so now I do floor scrubbers with the largest floor scrubber company in the world. So it was a lot of that motivation. What I liked about the technology is it combined the electrical, mechanical, and computer science technologies that I loved. And so that definitely lit a fire. And it looks like it's about to take off as an industry. So after 16 years, we're kind of excited with where we're at now. Other questions? Yeah?
What was your first successful product?
First successful product? You're assuming we've had one. Material handling factory robot was we have 1,000 plus of those around the world, so I would say that's the first one. There's a lot of structure around those factories, so you could have safety lanes, and there was a huge need for moving material around factories and warehouses, and a lot of structure already in process there, and so that's where it first launched. Good question.
Did your company help maintain the robot first in-house? Like, if something breaks down, you go out and like,
So, as you saw, we're in a bunch of industries. We have strategically chosen which, your question was, do we support the robots that we sell into the world? And the answer is twofold. For industries where, for example, agriculture, John Deere has about 15,000 dealerships around the world. That's very hard to compete with. And so we partner with Case New Holland, who has 10,000 dealerships around the world, and they do that. We do the final tier of support. Other industries where there isn't that infrastructure and channel already in place we have to compete with, we do support the products ourselves. Yeah?
how do you sell technology in old phones that have to be
Great question. The question was, how do we sell technology to old people like my dad, my dad literally parks the tractor and pulls out the horses and goes, and he was cutting hay this year with a horse. And so I definitely know where you're coming from. So one driver is that they can't get the labor they need, and so their sons are not staying on the farm anymore, and so they have no options, or they are paying people from Mexico and they can no longer get them, or the financials on the rates that they're having to pay those people with minimum wage hikes up to $15 an hour on the West Coast now is just driving that. But yeah, they won't be the early adopters. It's more the corporate farms and the young guys, but ultimately it will transition in. All right,
I
thanks.
think I mistold him that we go to 1:30 and we go to 1:20.
There-
I know some of you have classes, so we're going to go ahead and give him a big hand, and he'll be here for a minute if you have questions. So thank you so much, and I'm going to